to begin tonight's Artful evening with a land and people acknowledgement. We honor and pay our respects to the land on which we stand and its traditional stewards, the Anishinaabe, the Council of Three Fires, which include the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Pottawatomi, also known as the Ottawa, Chippewa, and Pottawatomi tribes. We also acknowledge the people of African descent who were stolen from their land and separated from their families through the enslavement Holocaust, and pay reverence and respect to them for building this country's infrastructure and economy with no compensation or reparations to date. Now it is my honor to introduce our speaker for this evening, Kelly Church. Kelly is an Ottawa Pottawatomi black ash basket maker, fiber artist, educator, activist, and culture keeper. A member of the Gun Lake Band in Michigan and a descendant of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Ojibwe, she comes from an unbroken line of black ash basket makers and from the largest black ash weaving family in the Great Lakes region. Kelly has worked on many national and international art programs, exhibitions, and partnerships with government agencies, such as tribal offices and the U.S. Forest Service. She has also received a number of prestigious awards and fellowships for her distinctive artwork and for her powerful advocacy for the survival of Indigenous cultural traditions. Among such honors, she has been named a National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellow, has earned a Native Arts and Cultures Foundation's National Artist Fellowship, and has been a 4-time Artist Leadership Program participant with the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. You can find Kelly's striking black ash piece, Every Dawn is a New Day, as part of our Legendary Voices exhibition. So be sure you stop by and see this exhibition if you haven't already. Following today's lecture, you can see it for free across the hall. Kelly's is in the front gallery pretty soon after you walk in, right to your left there. So make sure you stop in and see that. That exhibition leaves us on February 16th, so we only have a few more days with it. So make sure you stop in and see that. Please also stay tuned for more information about some exciting collaborations with Kelly that are coming up at the KIA. So we're really excited about those and looking forward to sharing more information about those as well. All right, so please join me in welcoming Kelly Church.
Thank you, Mariam. Ani Anishna, Kelly Church in Dishnakas, Hopkins, Michigan, Ojibwe. And what I just said is, hello, how are you? My name is Kelly Church, and I'm from Hopkins, Michigan. Tonight, I'll be sharing with you about my art, Native arts, looking ahead to the future, and sustainability. So this is a piece that I made for a show for the Grand Rapids Art Museum a few years ago. All of the art that I create starts with a fiber from the forest of Michigan. We harvest these fibers with traditions that have been passed on to me by wonderful elders that we have throughout our state. And we harvest the trees, we process the materials, and then we weave our messages and voices of today. This is a welcome mat, just like we all have welcome mats when you come into your door. So it's my way of saying, as a Native person, welcome to the Native land that you are on, because we are all on Native land today. So you can see the little message at the bottom of the mat. I started making these mats and then putting messages on the floor subliminally for those people who look at their feet. I'm kidding, but just so a message that comes along with the art. All of the art that I create today has a message for the future of a concern that might be going on today, something in my life, something that concerns all of us, but mostly I'm always thinking about the future generations. So this is my family from 1919 in Salem, Michigan. It's in Allegan County. I live really close to there today still. My grandfather grew up in this area, and many of us continue to live there after. I have moved around the United States, but I've always moved back home. And in 2007, I moved back home permanently and built a home. So this is my grandfather. And let's see, he's that little baby right there. And you can see that splitter he's holding on to. That is what we split our materials with. His mother is this woman right here. She's hanging on to some splints. This man here is pounding the log that we get all of our materials from. He has the axe in his hand. He looks like the strongest one in the group, so I can see why they chose him. And then these are my grandfather's, all of his cousins and his aunts here. So this was a very large black ash basket weaving family that has been weaving since before 1919. We didn't start that year. My grandmother liked to say to me, we had baskets before they had cameras. So we've been making black ash baskets since before cameras were made. So we can't document the very first basket we made. We just know we have been making them since before this country existed. Native people are oral storytellers, and this is how we pass on our history and our stories. And we do this for a reason. When you write down everything, you tend to be comfortable with what is written. You think it's all safe, it's there, it will be there available later, and you might put that book away. Well, that book might get burned, the information might be lost. If you do not continue to pass it on each generation, then your history and your stories could be lost. So Native people, we are oral storytellers in this way, and that's how we pass on our stories to our future generations and our histories as well. Not that we don't ever write it down, but this is our main way. So I like to tell people, when a Native person tells you something, you just have to take it for truth. So this is Every Dawn is a New Day. I was so honored to be asked to do a piece for the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts that talks about, that tells the story of some kind of history. So what I did when I was creating this piece is I read a lot about the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts, and this is an amazing place. This place was started with founders that had such a great vision. Their visions came alive into what we have here today. It has a really vibrant school. It has teachers. These classes are amazing. I actually signed up for memberships so I can take the classes here. I'll be doing that this spring. I actually found 2 great classes that I want to take. And so this is a place that I learned even more about during that time. I learned that one of the first speakers, lecture speakers that they had back in, I believe, in 1932 was Diego Rivera. Now, how amazing is that? That, like today, could we all hear him speak? That would be so amazing. But that was one of the first speakers to come here. And over the years, they have included all of the artists from the community and uplifted them. They show them in the gift shops. I just purchased some art from there. So this is an amazing place that had an amazing vision over 100 years ago. And it really did come to fruition, and I think it just gets better and better all the time. This piece here is made out of black ash, the black ash from Michigan that we harvest. We harvest our trees by looking for a good basket tree, which the bark will go straight. The growth rings will be about the thickness of a nickel, and then we will harvest it. Black ash trees grow about 20 to 40 feet tall without branching, which makes them very suitable for basket weaving. Once we cut that tree down, we'll cut it into logs, 6 to 8 feet long. And then I have a really strong guy in the front. Remember that strong guy in the other picture? We all like to have one. So I have my husband who will carry out the logs on his shoulder out of the woods. They grow in the swamps. When we get home, we take a very old axe, and it's rounded on the back because new axes have a very flat edge. And if we pound our materials with a new axe, it can hurt them and make them split in places we don't want. With this rounded edge of the axe, we pound it every ½ inch down the length of the log as hard as you're chopping wood. That's another reason you need a really strong friend. And then the growth rings will pop up and release. I take each growth ring, split it in half, and this is what we get. We get the beautiful white material that you see is the natural color, and then I can dye them with beautiful colors. And this one I dyed with coral. And what I was thinking of was every single day when we wake up, it's a new day. No matter what happened yesterday, whether it was good, whether it was bad, every day is a new day for a new opportunity. And that's how I see the future for everyone that's coming along after us. Every day when they wake up, they should have the same opportunities that we have. And that is clean water, availability to food, and all of those wonderful things that we're all striving for in our lives. So I do a lot of work about Native history. Our histories have never been told. We can say that our histories are not really told hardly at all. When I was in high school, I went to the back of the history book in history class. There was one paragraph about Native Americans. But I grew up with my father, and I knew there was a lot more history to that. My father was one of the last commissioners on Indian Affairs in Michigan. He created the policies and procedures to get our tribes recognized in Michigan, and he helped 6 tribes in Michigan get federal recognition. So when you have a father like that, you're always hearing history. So we could go anywhere in Michigan, and my dad would be like, this is the place, and he would tell it. So when you're younger, sometimes I'll admit I might have rolled my eyes. Oh no, here's another history lesson. But he told it so often and so much that when I got older, I started to remember it as he was telling it to me. And now he's not with us any longer. And I'm very thankful for those oral history lessons he gave me. I know a lot about Michigan. I can recite names back to the signatory chief, which is my 5th great-grandfather. And I know a lot about who we are. Here, where we are today, is the reservation of Chief Matchibenashuish. It was a 3-mile square in the city of Kalamazoo, and I am a direct descendant of Chief Matchibenashuish. And so when people say you are on Native land, like I expressed earlier, it is the truth. We are all on Native land today. We might all have a piece of paper, and I have one too, that is a deed to land that we all reside on today. But in the beginning, when these lands were acquired, they were acquired in ways where there would be a treaty with a lot of words, and then chiefs signing an X next to their name. And that's because they couldn't read the treaty and they didn't know how to write English. So I don't think that these treaties were really fair in that way, because you're giving something to be like giving you guys something in the Anishinaabe language and telling you, yeah, this is what it is. It's going to be good for you. If you don't know how to write my language, just go ahead and sign the X. You'll be fine. So if you think of it in that way, then we are all on Native land. The land was not, given freely. It was acquired in a different way. So this is why you will hear Native people say a lot, land back and you are on Native land. In the early days too, they also took our children back in the late 1890s. They started taking Native children from their homes and taking them to boarding schools. These were forced takings of the children. So I like to tell people, do you guys remember what you were doing at 7 years old? I was learning to, maybe ride my bike at 5 or 6 and things like that. So I like to remember back to those wonderful things I was doing, playing with dolls, going to the playground. Well, these children were taken from their homes. The normal ages were 7 through 14, but it could be as early as 3 years old that they were taken from their parents and brought to boarding schools. So the main purpose was to kill the Indian, save the man. And sometimes children actually did perish and they never made it home. In the beginning years, they would take the children year-round, so they could not go home and see their parents. Later on, they could go home in the summer times. The purpose was to have them learn English, forget their language, forget their cultures, and forget their traditions. So my grandmother only spoke our native language when she was born until she was 7 years old, and then she was taken to a boarding school. And there, when she spoke her Anishinaabe language, she was punished. And she told me that when she spoke it once, she had to go into a dark storeroom and scrub the floor by herself. And that scared her, so she learned English. My grandmother also did not tell me the story about boarding schools, so I do not expect the whole world to be aware of them either. This is one of those parts where our histories are untold, and when they are told, they're not told enough. So when I asked my grandmother how she learned English, she told me she went to the country school down the road. And a few years later, I learned about boarding schools, and I asked her if she went, and then she told me. So it wasn't a good time for the children. So it wasn't something they shared readily, but it also is a darker time in history because you're literally taking 86% of the Native children in the United States away from their families to take away their culture, language, and tradition. And guess how we get recognized? Those tribes that my father got recognized back in the day, laws might have changed a little lately, were based on knowing your language, knowing your traditions, and knowing your culture and remaining a community. So they tried to take it away, then you have to prove that you kept it to become a federally recognized tribe. Thankfully, we were able to do that. As you can see in this hat, there's sweetgrass, there's basswood on it, there's copper. Copper comes from the Great Lakes. We had float copper here. It has white cedar on it, and it has black ash. These are all traditions that have been continuously passed on, and we were able to keep our traditions. We are able to keep our language with the help of our relatives from Canada. We like to call them our relatives because we didn't make the border, and we were all living here in the North America. So this is a time in the early 1900s when they took our children. And if you can understand that happening, then you can understand a little bit more about the generations after. So this is a book of, I call before and after, and I did it like a pop-up book style because, doesn't everyone love a good pop-up book? I know I buy them sometimes just to study them, those pop-up cards. If you want to give a really pretty card to someone, you get one, it opens up, pops up a tree. So I bought some and I started looking at them and I was thinking, this is a good way to share what happened to the children, a children's pop-up book. So before and after it's called. On the left side, you'll see the children as they went into the boarding school. And on the right side is what they looked like when they came out. They would cut their hair. My grandmother used to have long hair, and when she came out, she had this little bob. So everyone would dress the same and look the same. And they wouldn't always call them students even. In newspaper articles pre-1924 and on, those I can use without copyright infringement, they had stories about calling them inmates. The inmates escaped. They wanted to go home. Sometimes they were just running away to go home. And their children, they're like 9 to 13 years old, maybe 9 to 15 years old. And then they would perish on the way home by freezing in the snow or different things happening. A few different instances they told of a policeman coming to pick up someone who was 21 years old and bringing him back to the Mount Pleasant Indian School. That's a man now. That's people that have their own lives. So that is more like an inmate than a student. So this is to show the children before and after and how they really did try to take, the things that matter to them. Our hair expresses who we are as people, and people can use their hair in that way. And a lot of natives have braids. That is something, and Hopi people have the beautiful buns. Dene people have their beautiful way of doing hair. So hair is a way to express ourselves, and that is something that they also took. This one I call Continuum. It is made with our black ash tree again. Here in Michigan, we had the introduction of the emerald ash borer, and that was a long time ago, way back in 2002, when we started discovering it on the east side of the state. Tons of trees had died. The emerald ash borer has decimated most likely over 800 million ash trees on public lands in Michigan today. And this is the main tree that my people work with to create these beautiful baskets that we've always used for utilitarian purposes. And then for monetary purposes, as non-native people moved in, they became a little prettier. And so they've always been used for survival. And I love that we can not only survive off of our baskets, but at times we can also thrive. So we're using a tradition from the past to still use our voices today, and they tell stories which in the future will become history. So this one is called Continuum. It's talking about the emerald ash borer killing all of our materials. The larvae from the emerald ash borer is white. He turns into this, the larva is about 1.25 inches big. Then it shrinks down to this little tiny bug, which is smaller than the head of Lincoln on a penny. And it is a brilliant metallic green with a copper belly. So I like to make a lot of egg-shaped baskets, which show a beginning, but they also kind of resemble the Fabergé eggs. I like to call these Fabergé eggs. They're made out of fibers. And it was really hard to get to tell people about the emerald ash borer when it first came along. I might go out to dinner with you and I would pull a bug out of my purse, and then I'd be like, hey, have you heard about this bug? Nobody wanted to talk about bugs too much. My sister actually said once to me, you're not going to talk about bugs again tonight, right? At dinner. So I thought, well, I have to find a better approach at educating the public on the emerald ash borer. And I started thinking about how beautiful he was, how he changes, the beautiful colors of him. If you saw him, you might not want to squish him because he's such a beautiful green. But if you knew all the destruction he did, you would smash him quicker. So I started making baskets that would draw the audience in, and when you would open them up, they'd have a story about the bug, like maybe a black ash seed or the emerald ash borer, or possibly both. This one, I made a basket that goes inside that is made out of a vinyl blind. Those we have in our windows. They can be recycled, reused, and out of copper. It's showing how we can pass on our weaving traditions, but we will not have the same materials to do so in the future unless we look out for the future generations by collecting seeds and saving them. So this is looking to the future, and what would you choose? I love a story that someone told me after I presented this last year in Santa Fe. So on the bottom left there, you have a little vial, and it has 1 gram of gold flakes in it. Then you have a flash drive in the front, which gives you information, and you have some seeds on the right. So which one would you choose? I was kind of thinking between the gold and the seeds. And then on the flash drive, it has a little thing that says, which would you choose? The seeds will give you food. The seeds will give you more seeds, which grow in the food, which you could sell and you can have money and you can eat. And the gold will buy you seeds. So I like to think about those things that, we think gold is some of the most precious things that we can have, but seeds are really some of the most precious things that we do have. And they're free and they're available to all of us. We can all grow our own food. We can replant some of those 800 million trees we've already lost in Michigan. And seeds are priceless. So this is made out of black ash with copper. As I said, in copper, we have the glacial float copper that was here in Michigan, and it can be found still in Michigan. We had a lot of copper mining back in the days. What I've learned from studying museums is that we have the purest copper in the world here in Michigan. It's 99% pure. And our Anishinaabe people, and Anishinaabe meaning Pottawatomi, Ottawa, and Chippewa, we are some of the earliest metal workers in the world. So we have been working with our copper, we have been working with our baskets, and working with all that is available to us at the time. Talking about messages and thinking about the future. I do a lot of things to think about that. What is coming ahead? What will my daughter have to look out for? Maybe future grandchildren. What is in store for them? Well, we have the pipeline in Michigan, and we have that horrible Enbridge oil spill that happened back in the Kalamazoo River. These things are very close to home for us. And once those happen, they change those environments forever. If you think about it, that we have 21% of the world's fresh water here in Michigan. I'm going to say it one more time because that's so amazing. 21% of the world's fresh water, like 1/5 of the world's fresh water, is right here. We should be doing everything in our power to ensure that 21% remains 21%. The future generations deserve that from us. So this one is called You Can't Drink Oil. On the right side, I have some water from Lake Michigan, and on the left side, I have water from Lake Michigan that has oil in it. That's not what we want for our future generations, and we can't sustain life like that. Our bodies are made of 60 to 70% water. I mean, imagine that. We're just walking around and we're all out of water right now. But 60 to 70% water. So we really need to sustain the water for future generations so that they can live, and also for all people to live. And water should be free. It is life-sustaining. It should never cost money, and no one should ever die because they don't have water. So I like to say this one's all in the details. This is one of those where you got to draw people in with pretty things to tell them things that might not be as pretty. So in this one, I used black ash. I used the Rit dye, different colors of blue to represent the water. The black lines going through represents the oil. And then there's silver, fine silver embellishment with silver beads. And that represents like that glisten that oil gives after it goes into the water. You know, it has that kind of shiny metallic look to it. So sustaining traditions into the future, this is something that I hope we all do with, not just with black ash, not just with copper, not just with the things I do, but traditions in your own family traditions, your own languages, your own, the traditions that were brought over here by your great-grandparents. These are all precious to all of us. America is made up of so many different cultures, diversity, and different traditions. Whether we still practice them or left them all behind where we came from, there are many traditions that are important and valuable. And I loved when my grandfather, I didn't love it when he got Alzheimer's, but what I loved about being with him during this time when I took care of him is that he always shared the past. So when he got Alzheimer's, he wasn't really, with us that day, what we did that day, but he remembered everything about his childhood. And if he hadn't had Alzheimer's, I wonder if he would have told me all the things he did about his childhood. So I was very thankful that he always shared those stories with me when I was over there, cooking for them or visiting with them. He would tell me things like, when I was younger, he never had to go to the doctor. Here's a big one. He never had to go to the doctor. He didn't like needles. So when I would drive him to the doctor, he would always say, "Oh, I never had to go to the doctor. My mother was the doctor." So that picture you saw in the beginning, his mother and his aunts were the healers. They would gather herbs from the forest and they would heal people. So they weren't like shaman, they weren't medicine women, they were healers. So when someone would get sick or have a baby, they would come to my grandmother's house. And my grandfather recalls, if my mom went up to the left, I knew she would be home soon, because that meant she was gathering herbs for a sickness like a flu or a cold or, something like this. If she went upstairs and gathered herbs from the right, then that meant she wouldn't be home for a few days, because that meant someone was having a baby. And those always took a little longer. And the worst part for him was he'd have to eat his dad's bad eggs for a few days in a row. So these are the memories that he had, but I would have never heard these memories without it. Another wonderful one was when he was in his little country school. They went to the country school with a lot of non-native children. And so after school, he would have to protect his brother. So my grandmother would make them black ash baskets for their lunch baskets. And after school, when the non-native kids would try and beat him up, my grandfather, he would fight them, but he said he would get in trouble with the teacher a lot. So he would take his black ash lunch basket and do this, hold it up and hold them all back. And that's how he protected his brother on the way home from school. So as I said, 14% of the Native children were not taken from their homes. My grandfather was one of those lucky children. 86% were taken from their homes. So this is my newest basket. It's the largest basket I've ever done to date. It's made out of all natural black ash splints and copper. It is 4 foot tall, 27 or 28 inches in diameter. And when I was weaving it, I could sit behind it in my office chair, which is a really big, comfy one for me. I could sit behind it and you could just see the top of my head. So it's a very, very large basket. It's the largest one I've ever done. My daughter and I are very optimistic basket weavers. We're always like, yeah, I could make that tomorrow. I'm maybe not that optimistic, but I do tend to be overly optimistic about things. So if I ever made a basket like this, I would definitely have to say twice as much time, because the time I gave myself, it ended up being like, 15-hour days, wake up, do the basics, but you'll be weaving from day to night. So, but it was my first big basket. It was a great experience, and it talks about sustaining our traditions into the future. And that's why I put that swirl in there, because it's a continuum, it's continuous, and it's forever being passed on. So I love collaborating with other artists. As an artist, we all have our own voice, but when you collaborate with another artist and put two voices together, that piece can be even more amazing, more strong, and has a bigger story to tell. So this is in a current exhibition called Woven Being. It's at the Northwestern University at the Block Museum. And this is done with Courtney Leonard. If you guys don't know Courtney Leonard, write her name down right now and look her up. Courtney Leonard is Shinnecock, and she is an amazing installation artist. I have been watching her for years, admiring her art. When she was on Facebook, I'd always be looking at her recent shows and her messages and her stories. And when I had the opportunity to invite other artists to collaborate and be in this exhibition at Woven, I asked her if she would collaborate with me, and I was so excited and honored she said yes. So what we did is we took our, Courtney is from Shinnecock on the Atlantic shore. My people started out on the East Coast, and we migrated down the St. Lawrence River to where the food grows on water, and that is where we are today. And so this story talks about how those two waters converge and meet together. How all of our people, we are all related in different ways. The Shinnecock people, they're very the quahog shells that we use for treaties. You'll see wampum shells. They're usually like purple and white, and there's a lot of treaty belts made out of this. Well, those are on the beaches of where the Shinnecock live. The Shinnecock live next to the Hampton beaches, so the beaches are very divided today. There's the Shinnecock Nation, and then all the rich houses. So she tells me that when she walks the beaches along where all of the rich houses are, you can still find the quahog shells, because that's not their culture. That's not something that's important to them like it is to the Shinnecock people. So she's still able to find them occasionally while she's there, and the purple kind of represents that, the merging of our two, our people, our lakes, how we are all connected. That net there, the fishing net, is actually woven with basswood, the cordage from the basswood tree, which I harvested and made into cordage, and then started weaving that net, and then it turns into hemp twine. It shows that it's called convergence and continuation. We converge. Sometimes our materials change, but we're still continuing what we do. We use what is available to us. Back in the past, we always used what was available to us. It would have been deer sinew. Today we have artificial sinew. Back in the past, we would have been etching on birch bark. Today we have paints where we can express ourselves. So as Native people, we are always telling our story with what is available to us. This is another new piece that I collaborated on with 12 other artists, and this is called Emergence. It is also in the Woven Being show. So on the left is my butterfly coming out of Cancun. You will see that it's two different colors. It's based on a rare male-female butterfly that I found online, and I wanted to represent, everybody. That is who we are. We are everybody. But this show at the Block Museum talks about how the first people in Chicago were the Anishinaabe people. I found an article about Indian Joe who passed away, and Indian Joe recalled when there were only 10 Native families living in Chicago before it became what you see today. So this talks about, on the right side, There's actually 16 butterflies made by 12 different artists. They made them out of pottery, buffalo horn, jewelry, painting, beadwork, so many wonderful different mediums, and it represents their mediums, printmaking. It represents who they are as people. So when you go to Chicago today, while it was originally Native land and Anishinaabe land, today there's over 30,000 different natives from many different tribes there today. And so this is called emergence. We are there. Oh, and these are details of emergence. I just wanted you to see some of those beautiful butterflies up close. So there's a few different butterflies, and that's like printmaking, pottery, beadwork, the jewelry, beadwork, and buffalo horn. And then there's also some wonderful shadows it creates. I love that. And then there's also a heater blower kind of next to the piece, which worked out perfect because the butterflies are moving constantly all day, and they look like they're fluttering. So I wanted to share some of the wonderful Native artists that we have that you might not heard of, that you should, because they've been around for a long time. But what is Native art? You know, when you ask that question, Native art is usually been defined by those who aren't Native. Art has usually been a class system in the past, more so, where there would be art and craft and people defining, and then people are always saying, well, you know, Native art is not fine art, it's craft. Well, who makes all those decisions? In the past, it was normally those who were wealthy or those who were white. So who defines Native art? I'm here to tell you today, it's Native people. We define our art, we define who we are, and we define what our art is. We used what materials were available to us in the past, and today we do the same thing. We use what is available to us. It might be the trees that I have always used, that our people have always used, and it might be paints, it might be printmaking. This is Wong Quick-to-See Smith. She just passed away in the past few weeks. She was an acclaimed artist who has been around for many decades, but just in, I believe, 2021 was the piece on the left was brought into the National Gallery of Art at the Smithsonian. It took her that long to get there. So a lot of Native art you will see is usually in the natural history part of the museum, and that's not where we belong. The natural history part is where the people who are dead, the people who are gone, the dinosaurs, and Native people are alive. We are here today. So this is, I guess, the museum's catching up with what has always been around for them, and that is Native artists, such as Wong Quick-to-See Smith, the contemporary artists that tell our story in the stories that everyone is telling. American museums will be made up of a diverse group of people from many different cultures. You know, again, non-Native people come from a lot of European countries, and so this is a diverse group of people that have their stories to tell. We have our stories to tell as well, and now we are being included in the same rooms to tell our stories at the same time. Okay, so that tells you about black ash trees, because I love trees. So the black ash tree only seeds every 5 to 7 years. The white ash tree every 1 to 2. Collected seeds last 25 to 30 years, and you can collect tree seeds off the ground and plant them yourself every year. I like to put subliminal messages in my presentations. So you see I've mentioned seeds twice now. So I'm hoping when you guys dream tonight, you'll dream about seeds. You'll wake up tomorrow and be like, I want to look for seeds in the spring and fall. So seeds are a very important part of everyone's life. This is Terry Greaves. This is another piece. Now I had the piece on the left is made out of beads. It's beadwork. She's a wonderful beadwork artist. And again, if you haven't heard of her, I encourage you to look her up. And then I had to include the one of her standing in front of her piece. Her piece might be taller than her if it's standing next to her. So this is another way of Native people expressing themselves. She's a beadwork artist. We used to use quills back in the day to do pictorials, and then beads came along and we started using beads. So beadwork for Natives is a very natural medium. that comes along. Terry decided she wanted to take it and tell bigger stories. She wanted people to see these stories in a much bigger way. And so she started using larger beads to tell her story with. And this is called Sons of the Sun. And you see those beautiful large beads and how they're put together. And on the bottom there, underneath the snake, all those little tiny dots that you can't see up close, I wanted to include it because it's a bunch of different little insects. So this tells a story of her Kiowa people, because we are still using what is available to us today. Terry had a person say to her once, this doesn't look like Native art, because she was using such big beads. But again, they were stuck somewhere. I'm not sure which year they were stuck in, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And again, who defines Native art? We do. We define what is Native art. And so this was a beautiful piece by a beautiful Native artist. This is one of my favorite artists all of them are my favorite artists, and this is another one of my favorite artists that I love. His name is Roy Boney. And so I'm always liking to see, where are people in the future? What stories are we telling? Roy is doing covers for Marvel Comics, and he's a Cherokee artist. He's a wonderful painter. He also teaches his language. He's a wonderful artist. So he does these wonderful covers for Marvel. Every time he does, I buy them up for my nephews and send them to them. So I just wanted you to see what I'm seeing, our Native people where we belong, in the American art museums, on the cover of comic books. We are part of America, and these are all the places that we could have been in all along, but we're starting to, make footway today. Avis Charlie is another wonderful painter that I love. Avis takes our people and puts them in our clothes and who we are. Again, remember, our hair represents us, our clothes represent us, our language. As for all of you in the audience, those same things. And so Avis takes our people and puts them in spaces like sitting on the bench, perhaps waiting for the bus. And then on the right, she did this commission for the Woven Being Show in Evanston at the Black Museum. And in the background, you can see the city of Chicago. You can see the waves from Lake Michigan. But look at that ribbon skirt. The ribbon skirts are women wear as a voice of expression as well. And so I love how Avis takes our people and who we are and places us everywhere that we are today. This is Monica Rickert-Bolter. She does wonderful digital art, and she does all kinds of art, but this is some wonderful art that's also in the Woven Being Show. And she's talking about hair, how hair can represent people, how hair represents our Black and Native brothers and sisters, our oh, you guys know what I'm saying. But all of our wonderful relatives that we have, and how people sometimes will identify you by your hair. As I was saying earlier, when the kids went to school, they got their braids cut off, right? So it was to take away their identity. So they recognize that hair is part of your identity. Well, sometimes people can have good or bad experiences by being identified by their hair. So this was a piece that she did about the good that we have, how we can represent ourselves with our hair, and the experiences that we can have with representing ourselves. Virgil Ortiz is another one. All of these are my favorite artists, and that's why I chose them for this, to show how they are talking about the future. They're using what they have available to them, and they're sharing their voices today. Virgil Ortiz is near and dear to my heart. He is a Pueblo artist. And look at these, they're so futuristic. He sees his Pueblo people in the future, holding their history, telling their history, and sharing their story. History is very important to me, and so when I read all about his art and his meaning and way of telling things, it was about history, and I connected with him, even though he doesn't know that. So I love Virgil Ortiz and how he sees us in the future and sees his people still being the Pueblo people with their strong history and their place in the future. And then this is Cherish Parrish. And this is where I always say, in full disclosure, she is my daughter. But I always tell people, even if she wasn't my daughter, she would be one of my favorite artists. She is a black ash artist who has taken this medium to a whole nother level. She takes, this is all natural black ash that we get from that tree we talked about earlier. She takes these and creates the shape of a woman's body. She's done pregnant women. You can look her up. You'll see many pregnant ones, not many, but she's done a few pregnant ones. And now today she's been focusing on jingle dress dancers. So jingle dress dancers came around during the Spanish pandemic. We were reminded a lot of it during COVID. Their dance that came to a man in a dream to heal his granddaughter. And so on the left is called her jingle dress study. She did it all with black ash, and the jingles will be those little loops after the designs. And then on the right, this is her newest piece that she created where she made jingles out of birch bark and incorporated copper into it. But it's for healing. And so we have a lot of different ways that we all need to heal, right, in our own lives. But especially as Native people, we're coming to my grandmother never talking about who she was and where she had to go through, to not teaching my father the language, to me today wanting to know everything. So we're still healing and we're still coming, but we are still here. And so the Art Institute of Chicago and the American Galleries had a renovation a few years ago. And during that renovation, they included Maria Martinez, who you see in the gallery next to my piece, and myself. So I'm so honored I get to share 2 galleries with her, one here and one at the Art Institute. They hadn't renovated their galleries in 30 years, and they renovated it and included one of my baskets. So when they put it up there, I'm used to having a basket taken out of collection, putting into a very small gallery. It rotates, it changes, it goes away. So this egg will be on display there until the galleries are renovated again. It was renovated 30 years ago, so it's called semi-permanent. But on the last part, they mention how my basket reimagines and takes us into the future. And I got mentioned with people like Jackson Pollock and stuff, and I was like, whoa, when I saw that day, when I first went there. To me, that was amazing, to be in a space and place of artists that I have always admired, and to be mentioned as an artist who is reimagining and seeing the future for all of our generations, just as they always have done. All artists use what's available to them. They're all telling a story from their experience and their lives, and we all share that for the future generations, which in the future becomes history. So sustainability is always the word I love to leave people with. Care for the earth as if the lives of future generations depend on it to survive. Now just think of that again. That's another thing I want you to go to bed with, wake up with. We need to care for the earth as if the future generations' lives depend on it to survive, because they do. And so it's going to take all of us replanting trees, keeping the water clean, and thinking about everyone who comes after us. And you can collect seeds, send them to the National Seed Bank in Fort Collins, Colorado. Remember, 25 to 30 years, they'll be viable for future generations. Collect and plant a tree or as many trees as you can each year. They fall from the trees, pine cones, those little helicopters, they fall on the ground. They're viable to plant in fall, September, October. I encourage everyone to. And start a seed collection and planting group to learn to grow together. And with that, I just want to say, miigwech, thank you for taking the time in this really bad snowstorm to come out. And it's really cold too, so I really appreciate you all getting bundled up to come out of your homes, because I know you could have watched it at home as well. So miigwech for coming, and for those of you at home, miigwech for listening. I wanted to encourage everyone to see the show, Legacies, that is in the galleries. It will be up until Sunday. It's fabulous. As I said, the Art Institute has so many wonderful paintings and different sculptures, just a wonderful collection here. And it spans over 100 years. So I encourage you to check that out before Sunday. I know it'll be up until 8 p.m. tonight as well. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to take any. And if there is none, I always like to say, I covered it all, right? Let's see. Yeah, there's one.
Well, can you tell us more about the piece that's in Chicago that was beautiful? What is the story behind that piece?
Yeah, that is Sustaining Traditions, Digital Teachings. It has a flash drive in it, and the flash drive tells about how to do the black ash traditions, because right now we're in danger of losing them. If we don't have trees to harvest, we're unable to pass on the harvesting techniques to future generations, but we'll always easily be able to pass on those weaving techniques. So it has a flash drive, and on that flash drive, I've put all of the teachings in Anishinaabe because it is meant for Native people. But even if someone wanted to commercialize it, I'm not worried about it. 10 out of 100 black ash trees may be good for baskets. It's a particular tree. It's also really, really hard to work the material. Like I told you, you have to pound every half inch as hard as you're chopping wood. So I never worry about anyone commercializing it because they'd have to be a really hard worker. And I don't think anyone wants to work that hard for a little bit of money. So, but it has all of the teachings on there for the future generations, should they lose all of the trees and have to replant seeds, wait 20 to 40 years for them to come back. It also has emerald ash borer in a vial, and that is for the future generations to see what decimated all of those 803 million trees that we will lose in just Michigan alone. It's in 23 states now, and 2 or 3 provinces in Canada. So that 800 million is just a tiny drop in the bucket of how many trees we've lost.
I was wondering if anybody was trying to grow types of ash other than the black ash, like green ash, that are a little more resistant to the borer.
Yeah, so black ash is the the one that the emerald ash borer likes the best. It will attack the black ash first. So he's asking if there's, if we're replanting other trees. At this time, we're not replanting any of the trees because the emerald ash borer will go after all of them, and it'll go after seedlings even an inch in diameter. So at this time, saving the seeds is probably better to do. But they've also been looking at like what other trees will, can be used in the same way. Right there is a really hard thing because we've only used ash from the beginning, and we've been using ash since before this country existed. And that's almost like asking, you lost your language, so what other language is there you might like? So that's a really tricky one. But as we lose the ash, we also lose words that are associated with our ash. So we are losing our language if we lose traditions like this. So Kukabananigan is how we say basket. Asigak is how we say black ash, our basswood. Weegab, we have weegwas, which is our birch bark. Wingush, our sweetgrass. So if we lose these traditions, we do in essence lose part of our language. And our language is who we are. My daughter studied linguistics in school, and so that's what she's like. Language is who you are. We all speak a language today that is common, but if we went back to where we originally come from, what is that language? That is who we are. So my language would be Anishinaabe, and so I don't know it fluently, and for the reasons we've already described. The boarding schools took it away. My grandmother didn't want to pass it on to my father. She thought she'd hold him back. That is what she was taught. And now we are beginning to reclaim it, relearn it, and speak it. But will it ever be as fluent, for us new speakers? But our language is who we are.
I just wanted to share that there's another exhibit in the Chicagoland area called Away from Home, American Indian Boarding School Stories. It's at the Aurora University in Aurora, Illinois. which is really good. It also includes some artwork as well.
Did you guys hear that? There's a show called Away from Home in Aurora. At Aurora University. It's a wonderful gallery. I've did a show there once quite a while ago, and it talks about the boarding schools. You can also Google, our Michigan NPR has done some wonderful stories on boarding schools. And there's also one that just came out called Sugarcane, and it's about the boarding schools in Canada. But again, we did not create the borders, so these are all of our relatives. And that director was actually nominated for an Oscar. So he's the first Native director nominated for an Oscar this year. So again, we are in places that we should have always been, and we're there now, but we are here.
I believe that documentary is on Netflix too, Sugarcane.
Oh, okay, yeah, Sugarcane is on Netflix, he shared. Thank you.
Is the one nominated for an Oscar called Sugarcane?
Yes, it's Sugarcane, and he just shared with us that you can see it on Netflix.
Is it a documentary?
Yes.
A feature-length movie or a short?
Feature length.
It's feature length, yep. There's shorts that you can see online. I think the feature length, tell more in depth, and it's also from the Native point of view. The NPR, they're really good at sharing our story. I always appreciate them when I do stories with them, that they share my voice and the way I'm telling my story.
Your new large basket is so spectacular.
Thank you.
Is that going to be somewhere where
Yeah.
you can see it in 3 dimensions?
Yeah, it's actually on view right now at the Crystal Bridges American Art Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas. They purchased it. So I was commissioned by them to do it, and they purchased it. It's up in a beautiful exhibition that is on display right now. It has, it has this a Native artist named Ryan Redcorn with some photographs that are as big as this screen here. There is some wonderful Native art. It's called American Sunrise, and you might be able to see some things online. But if you've never been to Crystal Bridges American Art Museum, it's also a wonderful museum, and they have a health center they're building down below, immersed with a museum. So you can go and get healthy while you're seeing art, and art is healing. I just thought that was amazing.
We've got this big Dale Chihuly out here, so we need a big Kelly shirt.
I love Dale Chihuly. Every time I come here, we're so fortunate to have him.
I just have to correct myself. It's available on Hulu.
Oh, Sugarcane is available on Hulu and not Netflix, but that makes a difference because otherwise we'd all be home searching, right? Mm-hmm.
Kelly, technical question. Are the loops put on after the basket's made?
Yes. So when we build a basket, the first thing we do is plate it. We'll do plating, and we'll build it up, and then we add embellishments, not just for beauty, but for strength. It's like double woven then. So when I build that basket up, I can give it a little pinch and push it in. But once I put those curlicues on there, especially the ash ones that were there, it becomes a really taut basket. And then I added the copper ones on it. So that basket does become more resilient and more strong as you put more layers to it. I like to say, just like people, when we all work together, we're more resilient and we're more strong. Mm-hmm.
Did you already talk about the pieces that you had that have ended up in the Smithsonian and all that?
For the Smithsonian, I did artist leadership program that they had there. And so you will apply for a project. And I was so fortunate to be chosen a few times to educate people about the emerald ash borer. During one of the projects, I was able to bring together the foresters, the government people, all of our black ash people, not all of them, but the ones that could attend from the different nations. We all use it in the Northeast United States, and bring them together to educate them about the emerald ash borer. We built a relationship to where we still keep in touch today, and us in Michigan were able to educate them about what was coming. In the Smithsonian, I have a birch bark etched baby cradle. in the Smithsonian. And so I work with different fibers of the forest, and birch bark is one of them. And birch bark, I do birch bark bitings. You can make containers. But in the winter time, when you harvest birch bark, it's called winter bark. You can etch on it, and you can write things. You can etch beautiful designs. So I made a cradle board with that, and I etched a hummingbird and beautiful flora and fauna from our Michigan. Mm-hmm.
What's a biting?
A birch bark biting is, so in the paper birch trees, they're white. There's about 15, 20 different layers to it. When you harvest it in the summertime, I peel those layers apart down to 1 to 2 layers, and then I bite them with my teeth. I like to tell people I bite it with my eye tooth so I can see what I'm doing. So when you bite on it, you fold it like you used to make those snowflakes when you were in kindergarten, except you're biting with your teeth. So I can do like turtles, flowers, dragonflies, butterflies. And if you ask me to make a bear or a giraffe, I'm going to have to go practice for a few months, and then we'll get back together.
Like on your website, on your Woodland Arts website, it looks like you also do geometric patterns.
Yeah, so, yep, so I'll do all different kinds of patterns. The ones that don't come out what I want them to look like, I like to tell everybody, it's a snowflake. So I just want to thank you again all for coming. Please visit the exhibition next door, which will be up till Sunday. It's really wonderful. And you guys are so lucky to have this place here in Kalamazoo. Take the classes, enjoy all the shows here, and thank you, miigwech. That's how we say thank you in my language, miigwech, for coming tonight.